Most emails don't actually need to be written by you. That sounds strange at first, because email feels personal. It feels like every message requires your attention, your words, and your judgment. Like if you don't handle it yourself, something important will be missed. But that assumption is exactly what keeps your inbox overwhelming. The truth is that most emails are not about expression. They're about information. Updates. Confirmations. Requests. Clarifications. They exist to move something forward, not to say something meaningful. Yet we treat every message as if it deserves careful thought and original phrasing. And that's how email quietly turns into a full-time job. Think about what actually happens when you reply to email. You read the message. You try to figure out what the other person wants. You think about tone. You think about how short or how detailed to be. You write something. You reread it. You adjust it. Not because it's complex, but because you want to be correct. Polite. Clear. Safe. That care costs energy. And you repeat this same process again and again, often dozens of times a day, without ever noticing how much mental effort it takes. Here's the key insight most people miss. Most emails follow patterns. Someone wants information. Someone needs an update. Someone is checking whether something is done. Someone is looping you in. Just in case. Different wording, same intent. But your brain doesn't treat it that way. Your brain treats every message as a new problem that needs to be solved. That's where the overload comes from. You're not overwhelmed by writing. You're overwhelmed by repetition that never gets recognized as repetition. That's why email feels heavier than it should. Not because each message is difficult, but because you're solving the same problem over and over again without realizing it's the same problem. This is the point where things can change. You don't need to write most emails. You need to decide what kind of email it is. Is this asking for information? Is it confirming something? Is it a follow-up? Is it something that actually needs action, or something that just needs acknowledgement? Once that decision is made, the rest is no longer creative work. It's mechanical. And that's where AI fits in, quietly and practically. AI doesn't replace your voice. It replaces the repetitive thinking that happens before the writing. It recognizes intent. It separates messages that need judgment from messages that just need handling. Once that's clear, the response almost writes itself. Because in most situations, there are only a few reasonable ways to reply. Clear. Neutral. To the point. That's why this doesn't feel like cheating. It feels like relief. You're no longer staring at a reply field, thinking about phrasing and tone, while your energy slowly drains. You're reviewing. Adjusting. Approving. Your role shifts from author to editor. And that shift matters. Because editing requires far less mental energy than creating everything from scratch. It reduces decision fatigue. It reduces friction. And it makes email feel lighter. This doesn't mean every email should be automated. Some emails are sensitive. Some require nuance. Some deserve your full attention. But those are the exception, not the rule. The real problem is that most people treat every email as if it belongs in that exception category. And that's what keeps inboxes heavy and exhausting. When you separate emails that need judgment from emails that just need handling, something important changes. Your inbox doesn't necessarily get smaller in number. But it gets smaller in mental weight. Email stops feeling personal. It stops feeling emotional. And it starts feeling functional. What makes this especially powerful is that it changes how you relate to email altogether. Instead of treating your inbox as a place that demands constant attention, it becomes a system you interact with on your terms. That shift reduces background stress, because your brain no longer treats every incoming message as a potential problem. Over time, this creates more focus, more calm, and a clearer boundary between work and mental space. What's important to understand is that this isn't just about saving time. It's about changing how your brain experiences work. When every email feels like something you must personally handle, your attention is constantly on alert. Even when you're not checking your inbox, part of your mind stays open, waiting for the next interruption. That background tension is subtle, but it adds up. Once emails are handled based on intent instead of emotion, that tension starts to fade. Your brain learns that not every message requires a personal response. Some messages simply need to move through a system. Others don't need your involvement at all. Over time, this changes how work feels. You stop reacting by default. You start responding by choice. And that creates a different rhythm to your day. One with fewer interruptions, less mental noise, and more space to focus on what actually matters. Email doesn't disappear. But it stops being the thing that quietly controls your attention. In the next video, I'll show what happens when emails are sorted by intent instead of urgency, and why that changes how often you even need to check your inbox. Because once you stop writing everything yourself, email stops controlling your attention. If this sounds like the kind of work you want less of, subscribe. This channel is about removing work that never needed to exist in the first place.